This guy is the most talented dungeon explorer, and he was hired by a prince of the realm. They were there because a legendary artifact is in this dungeon. This place is full of traps, and Stech Atelier knew how to identify and disable all of them. Years of experience made him the best. He reads the place, goes ahead, and points out to the unaware about the traps on the ceiling, also mentioning that, as they walked, he heard the sound of trap mechanisms that must be triggered by the wall. Atelier crafts mechanisms and disables all traps. They reach the heart of the dungeon, but to get through this area, defeat the local boss, and be happy. But how do we defeat the dungeon boss? He threw a rock to get the Guardian's attention. Now, this is the soldier's job. Stech was only paid to guide them. They run in panic. The monster spews a jet of fire at the soldiers, but it's futile since the armor and shields have magical protection. The commander orders them to form a shield wall in advance to defend against the fire attack. They survive the attacks, then the commander asks Atelier to do something about it. He used a crossbow and hit the creature right in the mouth. By drawing the boss's attention, he was almost crushed. That soldier trusted his shield way too much. The protagonist swiftly dodges but ends up cornered by the dungeon boss. He was about to die, but before that, the soldiers execute a shield wall maneuver and save the explorer. In the monster's moment of distraction, the commander attacks from behind and hits the boss's face. The creature falls, and now it's the knight's turn to act. The man jumps, defeats the creature on the ground. They manage to defeat the final boss of the ancient dungeon, and now it's time for the soldier's reward. This battle left our veteran explorer impressed with his team. Satisfied with the work, everyone heads towards the room where the prize is. What interests them is not gold and jewels, it's the artifact in the deepest part of the dungeon, and there lies the dungeon artifact. Everyone is enchanted by the item's gleam. Unexpectedly, the knight asks Stech Atelier if he wants to touch the item. Stech Atelier is an experienced adventurer and knows that the dungeon artifact belongs to the expedition leader, but for some reason, he offers it to the hired explorer to be the first to have a chance to touch the expedition item. In the excitement of having this experience, Stech Atelier goes fearlessly and touches the demon's ring in front of him. But that look in the prince's eyes, it couldn't be good. An energy so powerful it shattered the floor and lit up the cave. It was like Stech was a light bulb, melting with the energy. It was fatal. The protagonist fell, and the smell, it said he was well done. The prince knew artifacts like this are loaded with negative energy, and someone needed to discharge it. Stech was betrayed. Damn the man who trusts another man. Balstic stepped on his hand and confirmed the artifact was deactivated. They got something incredible, but something went out of control. The artifact started to scream, and then it bonded to Stech's body. The explorer's body began to regenerate. Balstok tried to attack, but his sword couldn't hit Stech. A soldier shot an arrow. It was useless too. The prince was furious seeing his plan destroyed. This artifact has some kind of symbiotic power. It joined Stech's body. The cave was starting to collapse. If they stay in this dungeon, surely everyone will die. They have to get out now, and all the expedition's efforts will be lost if they don't get the prize. Balstok, the soldier's leader, decided to use the emergency scroll to save the prince. He ran to the man and activated the scroll. The cave floor collapsed, and Stech fell into the abyss. The protagonist was alive, and when he got out of the water got out of him. And then opens his eyes. He had been holding it the whole time. No one has ever been so close to death as Stech Atelier. He'd actually experienced the other side, and now returned to the world of the living. The knight and the commander who organized this exploration mission teleport out of the dungeon with a scroll. Unfortunately, they were the only ones to survive. All the other hired soldiers were buried in the collapsed dungeon. The worst part is that the honorable knight, Gerald, is the youngest prince of the kingdom, and he organized this expedition to obtain a legendary artifact in an attempt to improve his reputation in the realm. Soon the succession of the throne of the kingdom will take place, and he has just miserably failed. Because of this, his reputation will be damaged. Commander Balstok explains to Prince Gerald that that artifact was not common. People believe that there are two types of artifacts, the independent ones being the most common, and the parasites. These merge with the owner of the relic and share its power. If the owner dies, the relic is destroyed along with them. However, there is a third type, the symbiotic artifact, which are artifacts capable of reviving their owner by their own will, and it would be entirely possible that Stitch is still alive. So Balstok should spread posters in the cities with a relatively low reward, since a high reward would attract too much attention. Meanwhile, Stech Atelier wakes up after falling into the abyss. He tries to understand how he came back to life, and then the artifact electrocutes Stech. He discovers that he has merged with a unique artifact. In addition to being brought back to life, the artifact is conscious and can converse with him. The demon's ring says its name is Memento Mortem. The ring says that Stechatellier is alive now thanks to its passive soul repair ability, which brought his soul back to life, but his body remains weak. Because of that brat, the great Memento Mortem is now without mana. Stechatellier tries to leave the cave and talks to his new partner. Stech tells that relics usually have one ability, so what would mementos be? Memento replies that if it were in its normal state, it would be capable of utilizing up to 40 abilities. Stechatellier is impressed, as the maximum number of abilities a human could utilize throughout their life is 10, so now he can have so many. Stech asks which ability he can use now. Memento says none, as it is without mana. For now, he will have to rely on his physical strength to escape this place. In addition, the relic tells him that he has another 12 hours of life until they both die if he doesn't recharge his mana. If Memento runs out of mana completely, the passive effect that keeps him alive will be deactivated. Stechatellier then questions that he wasn't really revived. Does that mean he is stuck with this artifact to stay alive? Several hours have passed since he was revived. The protagonist, motivated to stay alive, strives to the limit and finds the cave exit. Outside, Memento says that before he was sleeping for centuries. Even though he woke him up doesn't mean Stechatellier is his owner. He will only lend his powers for now. One of his abilities is to eat curses. With this, he can absorb energy from other relics and mana from living creatures after defeating them. Stech uses his instinct and notices footprints, and then the smell. It's a giant wolf, and it will be his mana source. The explorer is weak and weaponless to face the creature. Memento advises him to use one of his abilities, the air shot. With the remaining mana, he can use at least this ability without exhausting himself. His ring tells him to aim at the wolf, and then the rest is up to him. Stech does this, and then the surprise sound of explosion. The blow is so intense that it disintegrates part of the wolf. Stech wonders if this is a basic ability that uses little mana. Memento, proud of his power, affirms that he is not a simple artifact like the others, and it would also be better if Stech didn't hesitate like a coward when using it. After these explanations, the protagonist decides to use the other ability. He looks at the wolf and activates curse eating. Stech was betrayed by a prince of the kingdom. That same prince now knows that when he returns home to Venetian, his brothers will mock him for his failure. His brother already has priority to receive the family throne, and now it has become even more difficult for him to have a chance. Now he will be seen as an idiot who tried to solve the kingdom's best dungeon and caused the death of hundreds of kingdom soldiers as well. After absorbing the curse, Memento says it wasn't enough, but it was already enough to have absorbed that wolf. Stech was deceived by those nobles of the royal family who killed him. Now that he has been resurrected, he needs to constantly hunt mana for his magic ring. For some, this may be a curse, but for Stechatellier, it's an opportunity to seek revenge against those rich people. He goes to the city to pick up his things and some information. Stech was already being hunted for possessing the artifact, and then he must become a fugitive. There is the city guard, very well protected by guards. He thinks about picking up some herbs and burning them. His trap was ready. He puts the guards to sleep and sneaks into the city. Stech finds out that besides being betrayed now, he is a criminal with a reward for his head. This makes him more irritated to remember the injustice he went through. After getting his equipment, he doesn't know how much the news has spread, so it would be impossible to live in a village for now. The best option would be to leave the kingdom, but this didn't fit his style. It wasn't how he wanted to behave. Leaving the kingdom so obediently was out of the question. Memento asks if Stech would like to get revenge, and the protagonist agrees, saying that unless he's a coward, anyone would choose revenge. The artifact laughs and says it was finally getting more interesting. With his partner having such noble intentions with revenge, he will have this help. His ring explains that his abilities depend on how much mana is absorbed, and if he consumes something with a lot of mana, he will become much stronger. Stech now knows the path he needs to take to become stronger and be able to eliminate the Gerald from the royal family. In a bar, a soldier asks someone named Dalton if there was any place selling quality leather at an affordable price. Dalton replies that there must be some kind of leather like that in the black market. Dalton notices a familiar face. He was taken by surprise to know that Stech was wanted. Meanwhile, the protagonist is spying on some people coming in and out of the city, and says that big cities like this always have back doors. Memento asks why he wants to enter this city, as he thought Stech would go straight to the dungeon when he heard him. However, the explorer calls the artifact dumb and says that an escape scroll is essential when in a dungeon, saying that he will be massacred if he enters unequipped and unprepared. This is the same type of scroll that Gerald and his subordinate had used. He goes to the famous black market, a super secret place that few know the location of. He needs to knock on the door and say the secret code. Unfortunately, Stech forgot what it was, but luckily the owner of of the black market is his friend Dalton, and is very happy to see him again. They have a lot to talk about, and he asked if his friend would like a drink. Stetch rejects, but wants to use a table. He puts the wolf parts on the table. The explorers start selling the claws, skin, and other things. Stetch asks Dalton how much a scroll costs. Dalton says around 600 crowns, and is responded to by a request from Stetch. Wanting to borrow money, Dalton rejects the request, but that he doesn't buy a meal. Dalton asks what the hell he stole to be put on the wanted list. Stetch tells his tragic story in the kingdom's most dangerous dungeon, and how the king's son betrayed him. Dalton explains that he doesn't have scrolls for that price, but knows a seller of stolen goods who could make a great price for a criminal. Just ask for Clyde and say that Dalton recommended him. Stetch approaches cautiously and the old man is sleeping. He wakes him up very politely. The stench of this old man's breath can be felt from afar. His illegal products are on the table in front of him. Unfortunately for him, no one is buying anything. To the delight of the drunk dwarf, the explorer is going to buy one of his items. He needs a weapon that he can use in a cave dungeon. The old man shows a pistol, which is not suitable for use against many monsters. He sees other weapons, but none of them seem good. The vendor suggests a hammer since he is in shape and has muscles. His choice is interrupted by Memento, who reminds the explorer that most dungeon passages are narrow, so such a big hammer is foolish. Startled, the protagonist tells Memento not to leave without his permission. Memento reveals that only Stetch is capable of seeing, hearing, and feeling its presence. With Memento's guidance, Stetch chooses a sword. In a dungeon, Stetch finds himself surrounded by various beasts, and he manages to knock out some without the help of the ring. But when he notices more presences, he points Memento to an entrance inhabited by monsters, and launches an air bomb that devastates the monsters, and then feeds on them with the Curse Eater. As he walks through the dungeon, he finds some rocks. With a pickaxe, Stetch begins to mine the azure stones and ends up encountering a trap. The boy said he could take advantage of valuable parts of it until he hears a scream in that direction. Pointing the ring to the location, Stetch tells Memento to illuminate, and then he is surprised by the sight. A giant mineral lizard. Which monster in dungeons is hostile? The creature shoots acid fire and hits his arm. Memento orders him to control himself, and activates the recovery ability to regenerate his arm. Stetch knows the mineral lizards and explains that they use their acidic breath to eat minerals and strengthen their bodies using those minerals. So a normal attack would be ineffective. He prepares to launch an air bomb, but is prevented by Memento, who orders him not to shoot because he is in such a deep point of the dungeon that it could collapse with such magic. Now is the perfect chance for you to use that sword you bought. The explorer questions this decision, but is reprimanded again with his artifact, saying that it would not be wise to hold on to it, and a medium-sized monster is the perfect guinea pig. Stetch draws the sword and advances toward the creature. He dodges an attack and moves above its head, where he thrusts his sword into its crystals. The artifact orders him to pull the trigger, and so it is done, killing the lizard. Using the Curse Eater, the creature's mana is devoured, and the boy laments about the sword's ammunition. Even though it was free, it seems like a big loss, as it is very rare and there are only 4 left. Even though Clyde made them with higher durability, what would happen if they break? Interrupted by Memento, who says he feels something wrong, the boy focuses his attention on the artifact, which tells him to be careful and not to relax, until another scream is heard, another mineral lizard. Stetch complains about not wanting to spend another cylinder while advancing towards the creature, which tries to scratch him. Just narrowly the boy dodged, seeing an opening in the creature, which he tries to attack, but is defended by the lizard, showing more experience than its predecessor, especially with its tail hindering him. But Stetch remembers that compared to the terrorist, this monster is nothing. Advancing on him with the sword, he tries to cut him, but it is soon shown that this one was more resistant than the other. Not being injured by the blow, the lizard punches Stetch, throwing him to the ground, reprimanded again by Memento, who says something is wrong with this lizard. The boy tries to remain optimistic, saying that as long as the monster is a living being, it still has a weakness. But being interrupted by the creature, holding his head and hitting against the wall, the boy is reprimanded again by his artifact, this time for having been distracted in the middle of a battle. But it turns out that it was already part of the boy's plan to be hit. He puts explosive powder in his left hand and firefly energy in his right, thus creating a light grenade, creating an opening to attack the animal's mouth. But before hitting it, a warning appears. The cell activity was irregular, with 95% of the body being affected, so Stetch explodes. After a few seconds, Memento begins to regenerate him, and says how he had ordered him to wait, and the lizard being magically modified, meaning that someone was in the dungeon and modified it, but does not know how it was done. The boy asks the artifact if any fighting monster could explode, but his doubt is answered with uncertainty of a maybe, and questioning if he was scared. The explorer says he is not and will move forward finding the way, then activating the ability to find the way. But he doesn't detect anything, not even using animal instinct, until he finds a skeleton. Stetch says that they do not react except if they approach them, but as it seemed to have been here for a while, it is completely petrified. Memento says that this skeleton will explode if touched, so it would be better to ignore it. But as he passes the skeleton, its body rises, and the artifact orders him to run because everything in the way is exploded. Stetch falls into a crater and asks what he should do if they explode even without him touching them. And the ring tells him to shut up until the explorer notices various minerals and his greed takes over, because with this amount, he would have money for the rest of his life. But when he touches the minerals, sparks start to come out, and Memento discovers what was bothering him all along, a strange mana filling the dungeon which Stetch was not able to sense, and the concentration of this energy was getting stronger every time they advanced. And the more they advanced, the more sensitive and explosive monsters they found. Stetch understands and asks if the bodies had become unstable because of the mana, which is confirmed by the artifact. But not only the monsters were affected, every object in this dungeon was being influenced by this mana, and due to the high concentration of mana, also blocking the scrolls, Stetch couldn't escape until defeating the thing emitting the mana to be able to flee. Walking for minutes, he finds the door of the dungeon guardian, where he deduces to be the one emitting the mana. Upon opening the door, he encounters a bizarre creature that even with his explorer intelligence was unable to comprehend. But Memento helps him. That's a genie, and at its center was the artifact. In this world, spirits are formed when mana and negative energy collide. They exist only to destroy their surroundings, as they have no consciousness, so they are closer to natural disasters than to a form of life. But how would there be an artifact in the midst of the spirit? Memento tells him that the Guardian is the problem, as it merged with the artifact and was spreading mana in the dungeon, thus turning everything into living bombs. Stetch deduces that the answer is simple: defeat the boss. He advances towards the genie, who throws several blue stones at him, but they are deflected by his sword until one of the stones would explode near him. Memento warns him that this is the part of the dungeon with the highest mana concentration, so the interference makes it even stronger, and at this rate, the sword in the boy's body would explode. After the blows, the boy faces the genie, who prepares energy in his artifact until the ring tells Stetch to run if he wants to live, unleashing a huge energy blast, which Stetch is able to dodge, then seeing an opening to attack the genie, who even though its body is a single boulder, its junctions are weak points, attacking then a stone, but something happens. The stone stops halfway and returns, hitting his jaw. Stetch questions how he would cause damage to this thing, and Memento tells him to aim at the artifact in the core, because currently the core and the artifact are fused, so if he uses the Curse Eater on the core, it will lose all power. The genie prepares for another energy blast and Stetch for an air bullet. Both collide, but the genie's energy is stronger, forcing the boy to dodge, but the energy splits into several parts, which is dodged by the explorer, however, who is almost hit by the creature's fist, which he manages to dodge again. After realizing that long and short-range attacks were not enough, he advances on the monster, piercing it with the sword and pressing the trigger, but it shows effective, but only a little, and the genie attacks him again. Stetch is hit and asks Memento why the air bullet wasn't enough to crush the stones, and the ring explains that it's because of mana interference. However, they are interrupted by more stones defended by the sword. The boy laments and compares the situation to breaking a stone with an egg, until the genie tries to attack his left with its fist, but Stetch says that if he can't overcome a small challenge like this, he wouldn't deserve to fulfill his revenge. Dodging the blow, Stetch realizes that if he continues targeting the core of the beast, he gradually reduces defenses and will be able to attack with Clyde's weapon, which was able to cause damage. The genie prepares another blow which is defended by Stetch, who only has one cylinder left, that is, one chance to hit. However, he notices something: the genie is trying to spin with this body. Even being warned by Memento, Stetch is hit by a stone. His artifact begins to try to heal him, and says it may not be the best time, but his body was reacting to mana, mutating. The boy just asks how long it would take for the mutation to be complete, and is answered that if he was in good condition, it would take a minute, which for Stetch was more than enough, advancing with everything against the genie in a suicidal attack, shooting an air bullet at its core, which is the first attack to hit the genie. However, as the creature protected its core, it was difficult to hurt it, so Stetch stabs his sword into the core and explodes. But that's not enough. The genie prepares several stone stakes to hit the boy, warned by his artifact that he must move if he does not want to die. Stetch is refusing to die until he realizes the usefulness of the azure ore he had collected before, exploding with the creature. Our protagonist finds himself very injured, but on the bright side, the genie's core had been broken and he finally uses the curse eater on it and escapes the dungeon. After fleeing the dungeon, his body begins to recover with the mutation that was gone. Deciding to check his status, the boy notices that his animal instinct improved to level 7 and the curse eater to level 4. When he asks if Mento was awake, a pop-up appears, explaining that the artifact limit had increased from 100 to 150 and his air bullet ability had evolved into air explosion, as well as 2 new abilities added, including crosswind. Currently, the protagonist is in the process of unlocking Mento's hidden abilities, so the abilities will be unlocked after certain requirements are met, opening a shop where he has 8,305 mana stored, and in this shop, Stetch was able to buy 2 abilities, the Curse Aura and the Curse Devourer. The boy wonders which one to choose, but upon making his choice, the ability was acquired. The next day, Stetch heads towards Clyde's house where he hands him the sword and says he would like him to fix it, as the weapon had saved his life several times. Clyde thanks him and starts to cry, saying he will fix it and make it stronger and more resistant. As a thank you, the boy leaves his dungeon spoils and his deposit of 3,000 crowns, asking if he could take some extra cylinders. At Dalton's bar, the bartender says Stetch was late, but he is questioned by the boy if he wasn't annoyed by breaking his main dungeon and assumes that the mine he had counted on must have worked well. Dalton says that black market deals were overflowing and asks if the boy would be interested. What is rejected by the explorer, who says he will sleep for a while. Now resting in a bed, the boy calls Memento, who says he feels dizzy. The boy asks if he didn't know anything until he activated the ability, which is assented by the artifact, which says it was reset the moment he met him. So most of his abilities were sealed, and he realized something last night. The air bullet is a basic spell without an evolution tree, but it changed, taking on a new form, as if it had evolved into air explosion, a skill made out of the explorer's necessity. Stetch summarizes Memento's speech by saying that he knew nothing about his future abilities, and then he just wants to sleep. After a night's sleep, Dalton wakes him up, saying there is bad news, and going to the bar, he finds Clyde very injured, as if he had been beaten up. Startled, the boy asks what happened, but Dalton just says one of his employees found him in an alley, while pouring a healing potion on the dwarf who was healed. The explorer asks how much the potion cost, and the bartender avoids the question, saying it wasn't cheap. Clyde wakes up, and when asked what had happened, he says it had something to do with Derek's gang. All the employees are disappointed, except Stetch, who doesn't know Derek, asking who he would be. Dalton tells him he was a troublemaker they let be, because he doesn't cause any big trouble, but as once Dalton had taught him a lesson for causing trouble to travelers, he must have tried to get back at the dwarf. Clyde completes Dalton's speech, saying he also heard about Stetch when they were getting his money, saying that won't satisfy him. Not until he reports Dalton's friend who has a reward and gets him arrested. This leaves the protagonist completely angry, while the dwarf tells him to be careful. The explorer retorts, telling him to focus on fixing the sword, and asks if he needs more money, while he leaves and tells them to put someone to protect Clyde. Memento teases his companion, asking if he was nervous, but he is told to shut up, as it's been a while since the boy hit people for no reason. The artifact asks if he will kill them, which is denied by Stetch, saying he won't kill everyone who made him angry, but they won't get away easily. Meanwhile, Derek was in front of guards, denouncing Stetch, but is quickly rejected by them, saying that Dalton is important to society unlike him, so they won't search his bar right now, even with a report like that, as it would be rude. Stressed, Derek returns to his friends, saying they told him to come back tomorrow. One of the members says the reward is nothing special, being only 400 crowns, and they already have money to relax for a long time. But Derek says he won't be satisfied just getting his money, so he wants Dalton to see his friend being thrown in jail until they notice Stetch behind them. Derek says he was wondering how they could meet, but he was grateful to go greet him. But the protagonist is so angry, he says the gratitude is his, as it's been a while since he fought with another human, and was quite excited for easy targets to practice. One of the members holds his coat, but is met with a punch to the head. Stetch advances, getting a knee to the head of another gang member, while Derek says he was nothing but a miserable 400 crowns, trying to hit him with a punch. The protagonist dodges Derek's punch and retaliates with a hook to his chin, asking what was the problem and why hadn't he put him in jail yet. When Derek was close to passing out, Stetch pours a healing potion on his body, saying it wasn't time yet and he had messed with the last person he should have bothered. Mendo comments that he loved his beer for having that personality, while the protagonist beats Derek even more. The next day, Dalton says he heard that Derek and his gang were walking completely beaten up this morning, and asks what Stetch had done last night, who answers saying he had only done exercises. But they are both interrupted by Clyde, who says he has improved and fixed the explorer's sword. Showing the sword, The dwarf says he added extra weight in the direction of the blade and used some trap wires to increase the offensive capacity, leaving it quite destroyed even without a cylinder. But about the cylinders, he hadn't been able to find enough alchemists to work on it, so he had only gotten 4, but as he knew Stetch wouldn't return to town for a while, he wrote down ingredients on this reference letter, which makes it so if he shows it to a specialist, he would be able to make the gas. Dalton also says he will notify the other branches of the black market about the boy, so he wouldn't have any problems accessing them. Stetch thanks them both, but before leaving he is interrupted by Clyde, who tells him to give a name to his weapon before going, as it was extremely unique. Memento suggests the name Penetrator, which is accepted by Stetch. Meanwhile, in the Venezia kingdom, Gerald had returned home and was in his room until he heard someone knocking on the door. The prince instructs to ask who it is, and his brother Alfred enters. Alfred asks him if it had been worth it, and Gerald says yes, but his brother says that's not what he heard, as he abandoned the front lines, led a stray squadron, excavated a dungeon without approval, and if his father found out, he would hold him responsible. But he tells him not to say a word when their father summons him, as he would provide an alibi. Upon entering the audience, the prince greets his father, who says he hasn't seen him in a long time, but without further ado, his brother begins to speak, recounting that when Gerald heard about the elven rebel army starting a revolt in the southwest, he rushed to suppress the rebellion before it could be notified, but General Enderle says this was news to her because, as the general of the West, why would they need Gerald to come all the way and suppress a rebellion? Alfred calls his servant, Conrad, and says his prediction artifact was able to see the situation, the terrain, and informed Gerald that at the moment of his return to the kingdom, furthermore, the rebels had leaked their plans to invade a class dungeon and steal the artifact belonging, and if Gerald didn't act correctly, the situation wouldn't end well. The kingdom asks Gerald what happened, and Gerald says that except for Vice General Balstock, the lead squadron was lost, but he was able to destroy the artifact. The king asks why destroy it, but is answered by the explanation of it being a parasitic type, so it would be better to destroy it than to leave it in enemy hands. Alfred adds that Gerald brought the head of the enemy general, which is shown as the head of an elf. Then the king accepts the prince's alibi, saying he should go rest. Meanwhile, Memento says he's noticing fewer signs of civilization the further south they go, and Stetch says it's because of the elves, as the last elf village in the Great Forest to the south was warned of the approach of outsiders, as they hated humans. The artifact says this means using abilities without Stetch being noticed, so being the perfect place to farm some dungeons. But it's rejected by the explorer, saying there are many rumors about how dangerous the elven nation is. Stetch walks through a forest so dense that he can't see much ahead of him. In this place, even his tracking ability doesn't work properly. Maybe that's why it's called the Forest of Darkness. Apparently, some magic is preventing it from functioning. Along his way, he finds a person crucified. He frees the stranger and tries to wake him up. Meanwhile, Memento tells Stetch that they should leave, or they will be caught by the wild bubbles pursuing them. He notices pieces of bodies and deduces they must be the other people who tried to help before him. Stetch decides to use his air attack to clear a path and pass through. This can't harm these creatures, so he decides to use electricity magic. With the capacity of 2 car batteries, he fries all the creatures and dispels the curses. After escaping, he wakes up the lucky person whose butt he saved. The man, upon waking, thanks him and explains to Stetch what happened. He says the responsible ones were the elves, because who else would be eager to kill all the humans near the dark forest? The protagonist asks why the man ventured into this area if he knew the danger posed by the elves. The man justifies that he is part of a group of merchants heading to the capital, and was forced to cross the forest to meet the deadline. His bad luck was being ambushed by several elves. Stetch was curious if the bodies in the wild bubbles were his companions, and unfortunately, they were. They died trying to save him. Moved by this story, Stetch says he will take the man to a point where he can find his way on his own. The man is surprised by such help. Using his instincts, Stetch realizes there is something strange about this place. Unlike a regular forest, the animal noises become more frightening as he advances. Ignoring these warnings, he manages to locate the forest exit. He guides the man named Patterson to the exit, instructing him to follow the path back to the road. Everything seems simple, but Memento and Stetch notice something wrong. He draws his sword and heads towards Patterson, saving the man as an arrow would have pierced deep into his back. The elves finally reveal themselves. A beautiful elf, an elf orders Patterson to come with her. Stetch, on the other hand, refuses. The 2 elves become alert, and the beautiful elf says she won't give another warning. Her arrows will speak for her. Stetch calmly says he is not ignoring or bluffing, and if she wants to fight, then just fight. The subordinates, with a look of hatred, ask if they can kill him. contrary to expectations, the beautiful woman says they should talk first before doing anything reckless. This attitude surprises our Avenger. Even the elf servants didn't understand this action from their leader, Elena. She orders them to listen. The woman asks if Stech knows why she wants this human. The explorer doesn't know, but he's sure she'll explain. The conversation is peaceful, so Patterson says he shouldn't listen to the elves. Elena asks Stech what the man told him. After hearing it, the woman finds the story amusing and asks Stech to follow her. Don't you think those curves are beautiful too? I am impressed. Stech forces the man to follow as well. Upon arriving at a spot with an overturned cart, the direction was opposite to what the man had said before. Additionally, Elena goes to the river and retrieves the arm of one of Patterson's companions, who had a slaver's bracelet, indicating what the man intended to do in the elves' territory. Hearing the facts, Stech now understands everything. Anger is visible on his face. The man's lies were clear. Checking the man's arm, he finds the same hidden bracelet. Patterson screams that Stech shouldn't side with the elves. He's also human and should understand that they are enemies. Despite seeking vengeance, our Avenger rewards the man with a punch in the mouth. Stech orders him to shut up. Despite being so proud of being a slave trader, he hid it before. Our protagonist says that for him, there's no such thing as we are humans. Any despicable person of any race he will despise. Stech asks Elena what they should do. She wants to hear his suggestion. The answer is visible in the human's fists. Stech wants to make this person pay the ultimate price. Realizing it would be his end, Patterson risks everything, trying to escape. Within seconds, he receives an arrow in his arm. Elena then prepares and hits his leg to prevent further escape attempts. Stech watches closely, noticing that the woman can hit a man fleeing at top speed effortlessly. After capturing their target, the man begs for mercy, promising never to sell slaves again. He even pleads for the explorer's help, but Stech turns a deaf ear to his cries. His final pleas for mercy are directed at the elf. Unfortunately for him, a few minutes later, Elena is washing her blood-stained arrow. While cleaning her arrow, Elena comments that she didn't expect Stech not to save his fellow human. She thought he would protect his own species. He regrets to inform her, but he's not the type of person she thinks. If that's the case, the beautiful woman says he must understand that she cannot let any human who invades the elf's forest escape alive. When the girl fires an arrow, Stech is confident, and the reason is that the arrow was deflected. Elena quickly steps back, realizing that Stech must be a powerful mage, as she didn't see him casting a spell. Our villain activates recovery magic and crosswind magic. Elena notices an enchanted ring on the explorer's hand. She says she doesn't sense mana from him, so he's not a mage. They will spread out and attack separately until the mana for the ring is depleted. The elves use level 5 continuous shooting, which gives more precision when focusing on a single target. The attacks are useless against the explorer. Stech asked why they bothered explaining everything to him before, if they intended to kill him from the start. Elena simply didn't want Stech to think elves are a race that kills without reason. He needed to know why he was going to die. Memento tells Stech to stop wasting mana. The explorer now uses his sword skills to defend himself. It's easy since the arrows only aim at his head. Stech, on the other hand, tells Memento he won't use mana because any of his abilities would kill the two elves, even if his ring thinks its owner is weak for showing mercy to those trying to kill him. Stech uses his attack only to intimidate the enemy elves. Taking advantage of an opening, he hits one of the elves hard in the teeth. It's unclear if the elf didn't lose them all. Elena asks if the ring is an artifact, and Stech shows it to her without concern. The woman is stunned by this. She hates such things and attacks Stech more fiercely than before. With a look of hatred, she says something so disgusting can exist. This is unexpected for our villain. He doesn't understand what she means, but knows it's bad and about them. The beautiful elf takes advantage of this moment of distraction and moves to Stech's blind spot. The woman is relentless and hits his chest. Now the scenario is 2 elves down and our villain with a chest wound. Despite the pain, he is able to control himself and uses his recovery abilities. Elena sees this, and even without knowing it's a spell, notices the wound closing. She then makes more holes in Stech. He sacrifices his arm to defend himself, knowing that despite the pain he can heal later. Stech now decides to retaliate against the elf. However, Elena can predict his intention and shoots his ring to prevent the attack. He didn't imagine it was possible for someone to foresee his attack and stop it with a simple arrow. Memento explains that before attacking, a large amount of mana gathers in front of him. She can sense the mana and predict it will be a powerful attack. Practically it works this way, but one needs superhuman reflexes for this, so it's unlikely that Elena is an ordinary elf. Stech agrees and advances with his sword, forcing her to retreat. But without giving her time to react, he advances again. He is repelled by Elena's arrows. Activating Crosswind, he repels the projectiles. Her strategy was to explode his head from a blind spot while staying cautious about the ring. But she's surprised when the protagonist hits her with a punch instead of using magic. Stech tells her that feeling too many things is a bigger problem, as she can't move while in the air, and he knocks her out with a headbutt. After hours, Stech comments that he has never had trouble with an opponent since he took swordsmanship lessons. Elena wakes up, questioning what he aimed to achieve by entering the forest this way, but the boy tells her it has nothing to do with the elves and he didn't want to fight her, but she would pay dearly for trying to kill him. He takes Elena's bag and says he was only here for the dungeons. She was lucky to get out of the situation so easily. He steals a map from her and says he'll return it if he meets her again. Elena tries to make him stay, but Stech ignores her. After a few minutes, he discovers that the dungeon is actually beneath a tree. Memento questions how he became an adventurer with such poor senses, and he explains that it's usually because trees don't grow close to dungeons due to the density of mana. Entering the dungeon, the boy is excited to explore it, trying to activate the pathfinding ability. But lacking experience with this type of dungeon, he uses animal instincts to echolocate, mapping the place through vibrations. Memento starts a conversation, asking when he became an adventurer. The boy says he started at 12, and if he wants to continue his lifestyle, he must be capable of handling situations like this. After descending into the dungeon, the protagonist becomes suspicious because normally, something should appear at such a deep point, but they haven't seen anything. If there were monsters, he would hear their heartbeats. Then they come face to face with a gigantic tree, and Memento says they should have opened their mouth for something to happen. The explorer asks if it's a monster, but the artifact says it's a rigid root and advises against touching the other plants. Stech realizes it's no surprise not hearing any heartbeats since nothing here has a heart. Understanding there's still a long way ahead, the boy advances through the dungeon, cutting and dodging vines pursuing him. Even though there are many, they're easy to handle, but when he opens his mouth, the vines trap him. Memento mocks this again. The root starts sucking his blood, but as it begins to hurt, the protagonist activates Crosswind and decides to take the situation more seriously, casting a fireball spell that devastates the vines, while Memento reminds him to absorb everything he sees. After finishing the dungeon, new messages appear stating the artifact's mana grew from 150 to 250, and 2 new abilities were added, including Reflective Skin. However, Elena approaches from behind by reflex. Stech puts his sword to her neck. Elena says she's not there to fight. Suspicious, the protagonist asks if she wants a rematch and what brought her back to Nem. Was it the map? Surprisingly, Elena kneels and says she doesn't care about the map or anything else. She just wants her pendant back. Her companions arrive later, but she puts them to sleep with punches to the chest when they notice the necklace in the human's hand. Elena, the beautiful elf, says she'll do anything to get her pendant back. Stech says this is very naive of her, and if he were an evil human, he could take advantage in many ways. The girl seems unbothered and insists he's not evil since he saved Patterson, and then let him die after discovering he was a criminal. Stech then questions why the pendant is so important to her. If it's precious, he will return it. With one condition, she must help him avoid the elves while he searches for dungeons. If they encounter any, she must ensure they leave him alone. He even suggests he could pretend to be her slave or be taken for interrogation. Help avoid future battles with elves they might meet along the way. The elf then writes a letter to her unconscious companion, explaining she'll be away for a few days. If the elders ask, they should be told she's taking care of a distant area, and there's no need to worry. Elena remembers her past when the forest had been her home for as long as she could remember. Her grandmother, who took care of her, told many stories, always saying something about humans. Humans are creatures whose greed stops at nothing until they get what they want. Among all the humans Elena had encountered, none gave her any reason to believe otherwise, until she met Stech, who showed her something different from greed. Stech confesses to Memento that this moment feels strange, prompting Memento to mock him, saying it would be even stranger if they talked as if nothing had happened. Given that they were about to kill each other just moments ago, Stech tries to apologize for forcing her to follow him, but she interrupts, saying she isn't sure if he is a bad person, but she also isn't sure if he's a good one either. She asks why he wants to clear all the dungeons here, since even if he seeks wealth and artifacts from the dungeons, it doesn't explain why a human would venture into the forest for that. Stech replies that it's complicated, and he isn't sure he could explain it to anyone before elaborating on his goal. 4 days later, Stech finds himself in a hole, tied up with a rope. He comments that it's not too deep for him to escape, but the design makes it really difficult, confirming that there truly are all kinds of dungeons out there. Hearing a noise, insect-type monsters appear and are easily defeated. Stech asks if Elena is okay, then they encounter a giant ant that attacks her. Elena dodges with a leaf, draws a scimitar, and injures the ant. Another ant is about to strike her, but Stech notices and attacks the monster, threatening the girl. He tells her to stay behind him as the ant attacks. The explorer uses his fire magic on them, his powerful attack roasting the ants. Elena feels the heat on her face and wonders, what kind of human is this? Had he been holding back on her before, he could have torched them all from the start. Moreover, How many spells can this guy use? This last question she asks out loud. Stetch responds that he's not sure, but it's definitely more than 10 spells. He says these ants are the first inhabitants of this type of dungeon. Their exterior is resistant to cuts, but not to being roasted. Elena notices that the explorer seems to absorb something from the defeated creatures and asks if all artifacts have this capability. Obviously not, but for him, it's not so unusual. Elena explains that absorbing mana is inherently different from using it. This artifact being able to do something like this means it can access something more primordial in living beings, something like the soul. Stetch says that this artifact can indeed absorb the mana of monsters, but only from the dead. For him, this isn't something that harms people, so it's not a bad thing. These words don't seem entirely true to the elf, who finally says they should continue their journey. Now our Avenger becomes suspicious of the girl's words. Could Memento have access to his soul? It doesn't matter much since he's dead anyway. Reaching the deepest point of the dungeon, there are 2 entrances. The explorer asks the elf why it's so complicated, and she explains that the complexity of this dungeon is one of the reasons the elves have never been able to clear it. Stetch gets an idea, and then drives his sword into the wall, activating his animal instinct, which makes him feel hundreds of ants, as if the entire dungeon were an anthill. Elena reinforces that this dungeon is so complex that no one has ever reached the end. The girl grabs the explorer by the neck and squeezes, but instead of what he expected, she covers them with a cloak that renders them invisible. The reason becomes clear as a gigantic ant appears, searching for them. Memento suggests to his owner that he follow the worker ants to where they are taking the eggs, as it will surely lead to the queen. Stetch admits to his ring that this is a smart idea, but when he tells Elena, she says that all such tactics have surely been tried by the elves before and won't work. While the girl disagreed with all of Stetch's ideas, Memento was responding to his owner, making it seem like they were communicating without seeing each other. Their strategy was to advance deeper into the dungeon, with Stetch throwing fireballs while under Elena's invisibility cloak, cutting down the ants that were attracted, and the girl using her arrows to dismantle the ants' limbs. After a long time of destroying everything in their path with their skills, Stetch activates his animal instinct and senses something nearby that is terrifying. Elena finds objects lost in the dungeon, belongings of elves that are cursed. They were likely left by those who died here trying to complete this dungeon. Because they are cursed, she can't return them to the families. Memento comments that it would be good for his companion to take these items, as he needs such things for the aura of curse. Stetch is unsure if Elena will let a human keep the elves' belongings. Even though it doesn't seem right, he decides to ask if he can keep them. The busty elf questions why he wants them, as cursed items can kill the person who uses them. She then says that if he believes they can be useful, he can take them. The protagonist puts the bracelets on his wrists and says they can move forward now, his evil smile making it clear that the curses don't harm him. They continue until they find the queen of the place, likely the boss of this dungeon. Elena shoots arrows at the queen ant, which awakens all the eggs in the area, leading an overwhelming number of ants to attack. More ants approach through the dungeon tunnels, irritating the adventurer. The situation is now a complete disadvantage. His plan is to eliminate the queen first. As he launches fire attacks at the queen, other ants protect her from being roasted. This leaves the explorer with no alternative. Seeing how things are unfolding, he realizes his only option is to activate the curse aura of the items he picked up. Stetch uses an air attack to collapse the tunnels, preventing more ants from entering the queen's lair. Now it's just him and all the terrifying monsters inside. Activating his cursed items, it becomes unclear who the real monster is. Items exposed to dungeon energy for too long become cursed, causing adverse effects like physical problems and debuffs to the user. Most people want to avoid these items, but this doesn't apply to Memento Mortem, the artifact that feeds on negative energies. Stetch orders Elena to stay behind him and not move. He uses several items and sends a curse aura around, causing a debuff to all creatures around the explorer. All the ants kneel around him, including the queen. This effect also applies to Stetch, who kneels as well. Only Elena remains unaffected by the curse's negative effect, which surprises her. Stetch needs to maintain the effect on the creatures, making Elena responsible for killing the queen. Elena shoots 2 arrows directly at the queen, killing her. After that, the explorer releases the curse effect, and the other ants are ready to avenge their queen. Stetch grabs his elf companion and activates his electricity magic, killing all the worker ants in the area. The busty elf says she has never seen such a reckless human, but also admits she has never seen anyone who could clear a dungeon that the elves never could. The explorer absorbs the dungeon relic, the queen's heart, boosting his artifact stats and increasing his mana limit. Stetch takes the scroll that teleports them out of the dungeon and activates it. 3 days later, Arduo is in search of the next dungeon, the oldest and most dangerous dungeon in the Elven territory, the Red Tree. The girl warns that they will die there, but Stetch says he is stronger than before, and everything will be fine. Memento warns his companion not to reveal the secret of the strength. Elena says the most dangerous part of the dungeon is the elves. The Red Tree dungeon is just past the elven village, and they won't be able to avoid them as they have been so far. Stetch must do everything the girl commands. Elena notices tracks on the ground, identifying them as deer tracks, but in reality, they are the tracks of striders. She explains that striders are the best scouts of the Black Forest elves. Elena explains that they are not the type to lead tracks as they pass. She also says they probably wouldn't defeat the explorer in a one-on-one fight, but if they come prepared to kill, he will die before discovering where the arrow came from. After a few minutes, Elena stops, saying it's strange because she can't hear any animals. Stetch uses his instincts and confirms this. The forest is completely silent nearby. When he activates his hostility detection ability, Elena is terrified. What she detected wasn't just hostility, it was murderous intent. As she tries to alert her partner, it's already too late. His body is shattered, his consciousness lost in seconds, and he falls lifeless to the ground. Elena is horrified by her partner's condition. She spots some elves lurking nearby. Certainly the striders. Perhaps Stetch will be the first human to die twice in this lifetime. They emerge from the darkness and strike again with a warning arrow. When they reveal themselves, all I could think was, this girl is like a green-haired Hinata mixed with Kiba. I don't know, but our elf gets furious and protects her adventurer partner, questioning why they're attacking. The striders return the question, why is Elena walking alongside a human? Their names are Jesper and Ida, and they both aim to eliminate every human who enters elf territory. Something they didn't expect was Elena opposing them and preventing them from ending the life of this man they just hit. The girl says they don't understand. This person is the only one who can defeat the Red Tree, so they have to go to that dungeon. They investigate the situation. Among the humans' belongings, they find Elena's possessions. Jesper says she was blackmailed by this human. Elena should just give up becoming a strider. Hinata says they won't listen to excuses, but they'll take her to a council meeting. The protagonist who entered the forest to defeat the 3 famous dungeons of the region was captured by the elf protectors of the region and taken to the capital city of the elves. Jesper tells the girl she's been away from home for so long, she could at least smile now that she's back. Elena ignored his request and told him to shut up. Jesper didn't understand what was wrong with this human. He wasn't dying even with the bleeding. Elena asserts that once Jesper understands how valuable this human can be, he wouldn't dare treat him like this. Jesper becomes furious hearing that he should respect a human. Hinata orders both of them to be quiet because one of the elders is coming to talk to them. The elf, whom we don't know if she's an old lady or a teenager, greets them. Strider Jesper and Strider Hinata and the relic protector Elena. It's good to see you. Elena was tense with the situation. The elder then asks why Jesper brought this human to the city. Jesper reveals that this is someone who stole the protector's relic and also blackmailed her with it. He brought him to be interrogated. The woman asks if he isn't already dead. They're not sure, but this human had a huge hole in his arm that can't be seen anymore. She orders him to be thrown into a cell for now. Elena must follow the elder. The girl wasn't happy with the situation, but she couldn't refuse an elder's request. The woman comments that the Red Tree dungeon is out of control and consuming all the elf forests. A week ago, an elf was dragged into the dungeon, bait, because it's expanding to nearby areas. This is because of the parasitic nature of this dungeon. The elf village will only be able to contain it for a while longer. The woman then seems disappointed. While all this is happening with the forest, Elena had the relic stolen and also became his guide. All this she couldn't deny, and none of the elders will accept it without punishment. Sometime later, the darkness fades and Stetch opens his eyes. Our villain wakes up and a huge headache follows him. Besides the deafening sound of thousands of elves screaming around him, he's in a stadium. Memento could only heal his partner's body, but couldn't awaken his consciousness. Memento quickly explains what happened to his partner. Stetch was hit and was unconscious for 4 days until he healed. The elves locked him up all that time, and today is his trial for his crimes and his public execution. The elder elf with a large bus orders silence, and everyone respects her command. She says the human must speak. He entered the dark forest and stole the relic that Protector Elena guarded. Is this true? The explorer could see Elena up high. Her appearance doesn't indicate she's happy with this situation. The human replies, yes, that's true. At that moment, all the elves in the stadium shout aggressively. Now Stetch realizes that it wasn't something important only to Elena. The elder then asks if it's true that the explorer used this pendant to force Elena to guide him through the forest. This he also admits is true. The woman with a large bus then asks his goal with this. Is it to kidnap elves elves to serve as slaves. Stetch just directly says the truth as always. My goal here is to destroy all the dungeons in this place. This statement catches everyone off guard. Only Elena already knew about it. The elder then asks if this is true. How many soldiers did he bring? And what is the location of all of them? And how does he plan to feed so many people in elf territory? How skilled is their army? Our duo of undead responds that they have no allies. It's just him alone who defeats entire dungeons. This statement is an insult to the elder and all the elves who heard his words. She then orders Jester into the stadium to make the human tell the truth. The Strider comments that he should have told the truth from the beginning. Now it's too late. He was so quick that Stetch didn't defend himself from the punch in his stomach. He was out of breath, and it was said that this was only the beginning. While the explorer was encouraged to tell the truth to them, the elder says that the accomplice Elena Drainwire is now allowed to speak. The first question is why Elena didn't call for reinforcements when she was robbed by him. Why did she let the human blackmail her? Elena actually didn't want her entire tribe to be held responsible for her protector's failure, but she didn't tell them that. Her response is that this human's actions in destroying the dungeons have proven useful to the elves. Elena says that even though she doesn't trust him, it's true that the human cleared the Dry Root dungeon and the Anthill dungeon alone. The elder gets upset, saying that's impossible. Everyone knows that clearing a dungeon requires an army and months of preparation. While Stetch was getting beaten without fighting back, the elder claims that Elena should have confirmed it outside the forest. Surely this human has a hidden army to have defeated those dungeons. Elena firmly says he doesn't have a hidden army or hidden supplies. Everything was done by her and that human together. Another elder questions why Elena is protecting this human and lying. Our elf says to the entire council that she's not lying and everything is true. Renata draws everyone's attention to the battlefield that human isn't normal. All the spectators realize the saying that human has an incomprehensible aura. Stetch withstands more than his opponent's fists. He claims that Jasper will collapse before him. Elena then tells the elder that everyone knows the village is on the edge and he's the solution they've been looking for. The girl reveals that he's someone who can absorb monsters and dungeon energy. Memento questions why Stetch hasn't used any abilities until now. It would have been very efficient here. The explorer says that in this situation, it would have worsened if he had caused a commotion, as if he were counting on his newly acquainted partner to handle this situation. The elder questions Elena, is the act of simply absorbing mana against the laws of nature? She will insist that this is true. Renata interrupts the conversation and advises releasing the monster. If this is true, they will know. Mentioning the monster brings concern to the elders. Renata is respectful and asks if Elena agrees that the explorer proves his abilities against the most powerful creature they know. She says that's perfect. Jester, upon hearing his name, surrenders and asks the explorer to calm down. As a gesture of peace, he frees his arms. The creature's roar shakes the entire stadium and Stetch's ears. Do they want him to go deaf today? There stood an armored bear before him. Stetch had never seen reports or records of a domesticated armored bear, so how were they keeping it in a cage? The elder thought it was an exaggeration, but Renata disagreed. If what Elena said was true, then this might not be enough. The elder with the large bust ordered him to demonstrate his abilities, and he understood they wanted him to fight that monster, but he wondered if they wouldn't give him his weapon. The protagonist realized his ring could hide beneath his skin. Memento made it so as not to draw attention and be separated from its owner, thinking the elves might have taken it. Stetch decided to use fireballs to see how the bear would react. The bear defended against the fireball with a single blow of its hand. This Volibear is truly impressive, our villain said. Stetch decided to use the blast of air. This attack was powerful, and yet the bear resisted, enduring the pressure of the blast, which was unbearable for all the other elves sitting in the auditorium. Soon the bear was unscathed, which shocked him because his attack didn't affect it. The bear roared and attacked him, but the protagonist dodged the attack and used his electricity ability, which left the bear feeling dizzy. Renata asked Jester if he had given any artifacts to this human before. He hadn't done that, and they had taken all his objects. Volibear smelled like barbecue, which surprised the elders because they didn't expect that. Elena, on the other hand, was excited. Volibear still ready to attack, and Memento reminded Stetch that he was running out of mana. He knew that, but he found out that his electric-type attacks were effective against the bear. The armored bear attacked him, and he avoided the attack using a wind boost. He jumped to Volibear's head and shot a fireball directly at the bear's face. Its head burned and it screamed in pain. Our Avenger grabbed its tongue, forcibly opened its mouth, and grinned wickedly. Could it be that inside this fake Volibear is even weaker against electricity? After a thundering smash, Volibear was being absorbed by the human. They called him a monster because it went against the laws of the universe. The elder with the large bust ordered everyone to be silent. They must respect him now. Besides, what choice do they have now? The elder who doubted Elena before apologized for it. Our favorite elf then asked what they planned to do now. What else could they do? They had no choice but to let him clear the dungeon, because that dungeon was a threat to them too. For the first time, they asked the human's name, and he answered. The elder stated that, to fulfill their request, he risked his life to demonstrate his abilities. But first, she wanted to ask why he initially took Elena's artifact. He explained that he didn't know it was an artifact, and had no intention of taking it from her because he wanted to challenge the red tree. With a serious look, the elder said that if he wants it so much, they won't stop him. However, they won't support him with anything other than basic supplies. Stetch feels like this woman doesn't like him. Elena says she wanted to go with him, but the elder didn't allow it. She tried to persuade her because the red tree dungeon was on another level compared to the other dungeons, and no matter how strong he was, sending him alone was risky. However, the elder repeated her words. She still needed to take responsibility for losing the artifact. Memento says that, basically, they don't want to send their precious elf to a dangerous dungeon. I think they're right. What about you guys? Elena really wanted to help, but they didn't let her. Since she was so worried about him, Stetch asked if she had forgotten that his artifact got stronger every time he cleared a dungeon. He said he's not as weak as the elves think. He doesn't plan to die. The elf elder ordered to return his equipment and asked if he needed any supplies. Stetch replied that some potions would help. Meanwhile, near the dungeon, the Striders tried to stop the roots from crossing the border they had created. Their captain aimed at the roots and commanded his colleagues to block them at all costs. Before he could avoid it, the roots captured him, wrapping around his body like in those weird animes you might imagine. An explosion freed the captain, and they celebrated that help had arrived. To the surprise of the elves, it was a human who was there to help. The captain asked what happened. Why is there a human so deep in the dark forest? Renata warned not to dare touch that human. If anyone did, she would cut off their pee-pee. The captain asked Jester why two Striders were accompanying a human. Jester replied that he didn't know, but the elder's order said he was probably their last and only hope against that dungeon. The protagonist burned all the roots outside and waved to them, saying he's going now. Pointy ears. Meanwhile, in the elf village, Elena asked her grandmother why she stopped her. The old lady with a teenage face replied that she would never send her to the red tree. Elena's grandmother only had Elena after her Nora and her son died because of the red tree. Elena is her only granddaughter and living family, but the girl was worried about her people dying, and if their frontline soldier lost, not only would all the elves be wiped out, but the entire forest would turn into a dungeon. Wouldn't it be better to support him as much as possible? Her grandmother didn't agree with her. Is Elena their best chance? Not for her grandmother. She already lost her son, and going to the red tree wouldn't improve anything, only increase the chances of losing her last family. Elena wanted to disagree once again, but her grandmother wouldn't allow it, because this is not up for debate. No matter how strong that human is, if he dies, they won't have problems. What the elves need to do is come up with a plan B. The elder with a sad look said he can't be compared with Cain. At least this human can buy some more time for the elves. Meanwhile, in the red tree dungeon, elf skeletons were scattered everywhere. The atmosphere of the dungeon was quite intense from the start. The protagonist agreed, as he could almost smell the blood in the air, which was a bit worse than in the first dungeon. He examined the area and found dungeon plants. So he asked his artifact if it knew anything about these plants. Memento was surprised to see where the protagonist had reached. As his ability to find a way didn't work in the first dungeon, he drew his sword and attacked the roots with his sword. When he released the gas cylinder, it caused an explosion that broke the ground. He descended and replied that its effect was a sinkhole, as he found some underground plants. He recognized them as familiar and smelled an unbearable odor. He approached the flower and saw an elf inside it, completely dehydrated. Memento couldn't feel any life from that elf, considering the foul smell coming from the room. He assumed that everything in that place was probably elves. Some roots attacked from behind, and he cut those roots with his sword. They didn't let him interrupt their meal, but he also didn't plan to let them eat peacefully. He removed all the living elves from those sacks and tried to wake one of them up. As he kept screaming, Stetch slapped him to calm down and be quiet. "Here, why you bully me, Why you bully me? He shouldn't be afraid of those plants." He gave him an escaped scroll and instructed him to use it to leave as soon as everyone woke up because he had to go now. The elf grabbed his shirt and asked him to wait, because they had to save someone who was the only reason they were still alive. He didn't want to leave without that person, Cain Drainoir. And speaking of the devil, Cain regained consciousness and wondered if they still hadn't had enough. He's at his limit now. Someone destroyed the wall in front of him, a human carrying an elf boy. The elf was happy and confirmed that was Cain. Stetch was amazed to see those disgusting things. He ran to Cain and explained that it might hurt a bit, but he should bear with it. The other elf asked to be gentler with them, and in a few seconds the elf boy was the one who should be gentle, as he carried Cain out of the dungeon. After they got out, our Avenger asked if it was Drainoir. Is it really who he thinks? Memento says yes and is not sure about letting that weak elf take this important person. Stetch asserts that he can feel the owner of this dungeon behind that wall, and that he's eager to get his hands on Stetch. Kane is safe now. The protagonist did what he's used to doing to get into places and destroyed everything in front. In this place, he found what he expected, a giant and terribly strange creature. He didn't know that disgusting plants like this could exist. The tree began to move its branches towards him when he asked if it had any information about the dungeon guardian. It was a subspecies of the world tree, probably of the same species as the tree growing over the dungeon. It was so imbued with mana that he couldn't even discern what it should have originally been, and now it was just an abomination. Stetch was impressed to see that the tree was coiling its vines to defend itself, showing to be semi-sentient. He attacked the tree with a fireball, but a wall of blood appeared to protect it. He was worried because that monster was very cunning, and none of his attacks were having any effect. He assumed that electric attacks wouldn't work either, since it was a tree. That made sense because the Guardian had been at the top of the food chain of the Dark Forest for centuries, so it wouldn't be easily defeated. It probably wasn't the first time it captured a mage so powerful and absorbed his mana. The protagonist attacked the tree with his sword, commenting that the person was a mage, but was blocked and severely injured by the vines. Even with passive abilities helping, he ended up being captured. Stetch drank a healing potion to preserve mana and threw the tube at the monster's head, warning it not to get cocky for being a bunch of mana. He was then shocked to see the tree laughing at him, and wondered why a disgusting monster ignored the basic instinct of the Guardian to protect the dungeon. He realized that the tree's influence went beyond the normal limits of a dungeon because there were no other monsters, only carnivorous plants. It even had a mechanism to capture and store future nutrients, indicating that it had an ego. The more he looked at the tree, the more disgusting it seemed. Using wind magic, he managed to escape and became furious. Stetch challenged the tree to attack him again, promising to kill it even if it was the last thing he did. The monster became enraged and attacked, and he avoided all the attacks using his dancer skills. After dodging the attack several times, he was surprised to see that a plant could be provoked. He noticed that the tree was struggling to cut its vines into smaller and thinner pieces. Stetch honestly said that there was something he wanted to try against the armored bear, but couldn't because of the many people watching. A combination of fireball and air blast, creating a storm of flames. The tree tried to protect itself with its vines but still got hit. The heat of the atmosphere made Stetch sweat. Memento instructed him to unleash as many attacks as possible while he had the chance, so he ran towards the tree. He used electricity magic on the vines, attacking him from behind. Memento began to find his partner very confident. Does he have a plan in mind? Stetch said to look closer. The tree's body was made of solid and rough vines, but there was a part that seemed particularly important. He approached the tree's face and punched it, making his hand penetrate deeply into the tree's throat. He used a curse aura on it, knowing that alone wouldn't be enough, so his artifact asked him to do something else. He remembered Gerald and used his desire for revenge as motivation. He activated his curse devouring ability to absorb the cursed items he took from the elves before and were in his fist. With this, he reinforced his fireball ability into Darkness Inferno. A fireball turned into a hell, emitting high-temperature flames and incinerating the target. Outside the dungeon, two elders and Elena went to the entrance of the dungeon to inquire about the current state of the dungeon and if they knew if the human was dead or alive. There was no way to find out at that moment. It had been a while since he entered, but there were no abnormal activities. The elder said it was her turn to try to suppress this dungeon. Captain Nazir panicked at the intention of Elder Bellanora entering the dungeon. The man advised her not to be hasty. To everyone's surprise, suddenly some elves appeared, and he instructed his people not to shoot at them and to lower their bows. Jester was surprised to see that they were the missing elves and ordered them to be moved to a safe place. The elders, Elena and Captain Nazir, were shocked to see these people, especially that Kane Drainoir was alive. Elena ran fiercely towards her father. They wondered if the human was responsible for this. Kane opened his eyes, and the girls cried with happiness to see that he was really alive. The elf asked Captain Nazir to send reinforcements to the dungeon, explaining that a strange human had entered alone and saved them. They received his escape scroll, but as powerful as it was impossible for a human to leave alive, so he pleaded for help. Then a strong wind came out of the dungeon, and a lot of dust shocking them. Elder Bellanora shouted that they must all go help the human right away. Jester and Renata prepared to go, and then the unexpected happened. The human teleported with the scroll out of the dungeon, and it collapsed. Stitch was talking to his hand when he realized he had a big audience in front of him. Everyone was shocked to see the human alive, and their attention turned to him. They were happy because the red tree had been eliminated, and he saved them all, making them free. While a hero emerged among the elves, elves. Gerald wanted to leave as soon as the soldiers arrived. He asked Balstock to wait and take care of some things for him, which surprised him. He handed him a letter and instructed him to look at it because it was a new dungeon that a spy in the kingdom of Gallia had discovered and sent to him. He wanted him to take care of it, so Gerald instructed him to choose some people from his elite guard and get the artifact as soon as possible. The dungeon was technically in Galan territory, which could cause international conflict, so he had to be careful and not get caught. He understood his task, and the prince decided to go first to the northern border, meeting him there after finishing at the dungeon. Meanwhile, Stitch was leaving the forest with Elena. He told her that he wasn't racist. But wouldn't it be dangerous to go to a human village with those pointy ears or face paintings? She asked him not to worry because as long as she had those marks, she would look like a regular human to others, although it was useless for those who already knew her identity. Stitch was surprised, wondering if it was some secret technique of the elves, but he wasn't so surprised since they could even detect dungeon formations. He remembered that Cain explained to him that certain mana-sensitive elves, like his family, could see the mana flow. Sometimes mana concentrates at a point so densely that they can't even look directly at it, and that's when a dungeon forms. The protagonist understood that he meant that a dungeon had just formed, and he confirmed it. Memento was happy because there would be no one to interfere, but that had been the situation for some time, so they needed to clear it before others found out. Elena was ready for them to leave, as she would go with him. He thought she was too old-fashioned, as no one else repays the village's debt. Memento thought she would be useful, as an elf's ability was really useful. The protagonist agreed, maybe because she used to be a strider. She's fantastic, as elven mobility is a powerful archer and even detects dungeons. Elena wanted to know why they were going in that direction. He explained that a small village was ahead of them. They would rest there before traveling for another week. After covering some distance, they spotted the town, and he instructed her to stay behind him all the time, even though she looked human. Memento questioned why the explorer was so confident. Doesn't he have a bounty on his head? Stitch believed that was nonsense. They would never recognize him, since he wasn't even wearing the same clothes. Memento now doesn't know if his partner is an idiot or not. They reached the entrance of the village, and the guard asked for his name while looking at the wanted list. He replied that he was Ryan Gosling. When asked the woman's name, Elena thought about Stitch lying, and also did the same. It's Selena Gomez. The guard looked at them suspiciously, but soon gave them the permission plate and instructed them not to lose the permission and have a good day. Stitch was impressed with Selena Gomez's cleverness. She then asked why lie. She did it, but still doesn't know why. Memento questioned if he's an idiot. He never told her that he was currently wanted. He asked her to enter the hotel first, where he would explain the whole situation. The bar was quite noisy, with people talking loudly. Compared to the forest, this place is much worse. He offered her a drink to try. Selena Gomez took a sip, but immediately spat it out because it tasted bitter and unpleasant, similar to dirty water. Memento had to agree with the elf. He didn't understand why humans drank that. Stitch sighed and decided to talk to her about the matter. He explained the whole situation while they ate, and she was surprised to learn that, in the end, he even received a reward because of it. He stated it was her choice, and allowed her to return to the forest if she didn't want to help him with revenge. However, Elena found his desire for revenge reasonable and remembered his words in the forest. She would have to be a hypocrite or an idiot to stop him. He had even saved all the elves from extinction, so she said that in the name of the Drain War, she would pay her debt. Our protagonist felt strange remembering Elena's parents, who supported their daughter going on a journey without knowing what it was about. Elena commented that getting revenge on the king was not an easy task, although Stitch was probably someone who could do it. She asked about his ring, and Stitch instructed her to be quiet for a second, as some customers were talking about having the king's soldiers on all the roads and land, because many people had been robbed there. Elena soon realized this would be a problem since the soldiers would be patrolling the roads, and they had no idea what was hidden in the forest. So, she wanted to know what Atelier's plan was. Sometime later, the soldiers were gathering people planning to travel the trade road. There had been many incidents recently, so they sent soldiers to solve the problem. Merchants with money to hire mercenaries for security would pair up with poorer merchants who couldn't. The protagonist saw an advantage in the situation and decided to find someone to take advantage of. He approached one of the merchants and asked if they could accompany him. The man replied that he was already poor and accompanying someone else, but he should ask that man over there, whose name was Farquaad Filch, a famous merchant. Stitch didn't need to look much to know that this guy was a pain in the neck.